chip away at it because you didn't get to wipe it clean, and then So I'm happy to say that this is like a very cleansing start of the week. Now, if you see that on a Friday, it basically means I went surfing all week.
It's not an episode of the show, and it's not the intention of the show, but I would love to know about your wipe a whiteboard clean process and how that works. Because I'm looking at a very busy whiteboard right now, and it's just like a constant state of stress. Keeps me like right here.
Yeah, I actually read a really neat article, and I don't let's just let it rip in here, but it talked about sleep patterns being linked to your to-do list, and it was like, hey, we're not talking iPhone because blue lights and all that crap. Whatever your methodology is, pen, paper by the bedside, because I guess as you're on your wind down, it's very common to be like, I forgot to do this, I got to do this. Oh, then I had this other idea. Like things just pop into your head, and it was the idea that if you spend the ending time reflecting on what you did, it actually stimulates your brain more to think about what you didn't do. So the opposite approach is, hey man, just future think what you didn't do, write it down, and it allows your brain to compartmentalize and adjust to view those tasks as a future goal, which allows you to calm down and sleep because you've made note of it. It's not going to rattle around in your head and wake you up from sleep like, oh, I forgot this one thing. So you kind of have this ability to to just jot it down. So apparently, literally going old school pen paper by the bedside, just to whip down an idea. Then when you wake up, you're like, oh yeah. Now you just.
I went to. I love this journal in particular. It's got kind of like, it's not your daily to dos and whatnot, but it also projects out like on a 90-day calendar, so to speak, and whatnot. But you can actually it encourages you preview the day, review the day, and then do exactly what you're talking about. And you'll love listening. I'm whoever brought these things back, not just old school pen and paper, old school, but this was cutting edge technology once upon a time. And allows me to color code,
Jam it, trying to get all the colors out at once.
I hadn't thought about that. I'm gonna give it a shot now. I might be distracted for the rest of the podcast just trying to get all my colors out.
Yep. No, you're gonna be wiping through all of those. But no, there are these neat little hacks. I'm just like, oh yeah, notepad, pen by the bedside table, whatever your thing is. And I use notes in the iPhone. So it's put the little bubble next to it. If it gets a check mark, it means the task is either complete, or if it's a project, we use Asana, which is an online project management tool. And the part of the business that I tend to spend a lot of time in is lifting off a project and getting it started. And then there's a team that it's hey, here's some of the detail work that's going to happen. Those are the checklist in Asana to make the project go from working to complete. But that means there's a lot of hunting that goes on. And that's where the notes thing helps before it, does it qualify for an Asana task? Does it actually make it in there, or is it just something? And I got to imagine when you're working with Mayhem Nation and you are the lead of business development, the vice president of all things biz dev.
Are we going to do an actual intro, Sean? Or are you just stealing things from the intro right now?
That's crazy talk, Nathan. That's crazy. It's crazy.
I guess I should shut up now.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Cult of Recreationalism podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Nathan Morris, along with Sean Lake. And today on the show, we have Rory McKernan. Welcome, Rory.
Thank you, my friend. It's great to be here.
Even though we've been going for 3-4 minutes already.
I hope we didn't lose all that. There were some gems.
No, I'm going to leave that in. So
don't steal from
Sean, you can do the next part.
Yeah. I here's the thing. I would do the next part, but I don't know if I want to do the next part. But you know what? I'm going to do the next part.
Do it.
All right. So some things you guys need to know about Rory McKernan. Not only is he a husband and a father, and often referred to as the best looking man from CrossFit, but he's also about as OG as it gets in the entire CrossFit space. We'll get into that in a little bit. Rory's a personality, if you can't tell. Some people might refer to him as a character. And he's also the head of business development for Mayhem Nation. An avid skier when time allows to get up into the mountains, and a mountain bike enthusiast. He is the longtime host of the CrossFit Open announcement, famous for the Roe versus Boz battles near to the death, it feels like. And he recently shot with a bow his first truck. And little known fact, Rory McKernan was also my very first fitness coach, CrossFit, if you will. And Rory, welcome.
That's it. I mean, that's the show. You know, we covered all the bases. There's so much to say. Don't let me forget. Don't let me forget that this coming weekend in Knoxville, there's a community event, and it's a 3-person team on Saturday. And Roe's no longer versus Boz, but Roe's teaming up with Boz and one of Boz's training partners. And we're actually gonna track down. I was so bummed to see this, but there's only 4 RX teams, which means that we have to just not get last and run the podium, but which makes pressure even better. But the worst part is that Rich Froning is one of those 4 teams, and so yeah, could go poorly.
Battle for second.
Well, look at, you could also like just make sure that everyone on his team gets explosive diarrhea. You know, just saying before the event.
Always thinking.
And listen, you know, rest in peace, Larry Bud Melman. But he did famously say on the Dave Letterman show sometime back in the 90s, do you know what they call second place?
First loser.
The first loser.
Yeah, that's Rich just looks like that. That's not even a joke around here. He's very serious when he says it.
I have no doubt that working for Rich Froning includes a whole lot of, well, we won, right? And if there's ever that utterance of, well, actually, we got second place.
It's more like when I explain how I think about things, you know, which is, and like you said, we've got a lot of miles in my early career, but even back then, I was like, I'm just kind of here to have fun, you know. Probably I don't drink anymore, but it used to be like we go work out and be like, hey, okay, cool, we're going to beach bar now, right? Like, or we're gonna go surf now. But when I explain that to him, like we're going to do a triathlon, and I'm like, yeah, I just kind of want to survive this one. He'll just kind of turn his head sideways, you know, like a confused dog. Like, it doesn't compute what you're saying. it's competition, bro. Like, what do you mean you're not gonna win?
I think the competition thing, look, we all have that gear in us, and like you can kind of tell yourself, like, hey, I just want to survive it. And I think we've said that in our heads a number of times because it's kind of a mechanism that calms you down from some of those like pre-race jitters or those opportunities that you get, you know, a little bit anxious about. I'll use yesterday as an example. Yesterday for me was the first time that I did. First time was the 15th time that I did Murph. So I've been doing it since 2009. And it's like I haven't missed a year, sometimes multiple times a year, usually a few times a year. And here I am at year 15. And I went into it and I'm like, oh, you know, I've got this knee thing happening. I've got this, that. And I'm like, bing, 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 excuse. I just want to get through it. I made it about maybe 50 meters into the first mile run, like first 100 yards. And I'm like, oh, fuck it, it's on. Like,
yeah, it's funny, man. No, yes, I have that, but not always. So like very similar situation yesterday and very similar gripes, you know, like listing off my excuses and whatnot, some of which are legit, right? Like you get to a certain age, like I've got X-rays on my knee, I've got a bone spur, like things aren't always stacking up nice. And me and my training buddies would make fun of it. I'm like, just like you have good hair days and bad hair days, like I have good knee days and bad knee days. And on a good knee day, bro, like I'm swinging for the fences. But on a bad knee day, like I am legitimately happy to be there. And especially with something like Murph where you do Glen, yeah, it's like forever bad hair days for you.
I'm going up against you. I got no shot.
Luckily, you got a dope hat, man. A dope hat. But like with a hero workout, I still do have just as much, I don't want to say pride, happiness, like I get as much fulfillment out of it just by doing Murph, and not mailing it in, right? Like that's not, like you can't do that. Like it's just such a fest no matter what. But yeah, I don't feel like I'm stealing from myself. Like you're not going to PR every year. You're not going to PR every time you go into the gym, right? And so for a workout like that, I do have the ability to not beat myself up afterwards where I'm like, oh, I was the last one in, or, you know, if my run really sucked, whatever it is. It's like, no, man, that's not what this one's about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about something different and bigger. And, you know, it's also when you reach into that, your pocket of suck and like pull something good out because like you have to, because you're in there.
Yep.
Like, I don't care what approach you take, you're doing hundreds and hundreds of reps of movements, and you're putting your body under stress, and like, get through it. And there's a bigger reason that you can just draw so much energy from to get there. But like, again, back to that comparison to like a Rich Froning, for some of us to be like, hey man, like we're going to go into this and give it our all. And he's just like, cool, that's not enough. There's more, and let's go.
Yeah.
That's a heavy presence to have in the room, and you're just like, no, I just want to get through this. No, man.
Yeah. And there's wiring involved too. Like one thing, like one massive takeaway for me is because Rich will laugh when you do like a train with Rich seminar. There's always, whenever there's a question and answer, inevitably somebody's like, well, what can I do to make myself more competitive? And he's just sort of like, it's not you'd probably teach yourself like tools and tricks to get yourself into the mindset to compete, to get yourself like as best prep as you possibly can. But if you look at like his history and the run up to it, I'll compare it to like one of my son's friends here in a second, but he is like the youngest or second to youngest of 32 male cousins. His parents were, you know what I mean? Like you got to look at the landscape of like who people are that absolutely like lines up to make them more aggressive. We were talking with one of my really good buddies. Our sons play lacrosse together, and his son is an absolute menace, just like in the best way. Like you don't want to be across from him with helmet and pads on, And my son, like when he wants to be, like he can fire it up, but he just doesn't naturally have that killer instinct. But he's an older brother to a girl. And he just didn't grow up. This other kid grew up with 3 older brothers, and he was like literally just fighting for every scrap,
Yeah.
And there's something to be said by like your situation growing up and then how you're hardwired.
Yep. I couldn't agree more with that. And like I've got friends like that too. They're like the youngest brother of like 4 older brothers, and you kind of watch how they act, and you're just like, yeah, you're definitely looking out for yourself. Like
There's no chill. There's no chill. You're like, yeah.
Like you have no like grab and scrap and fight for everything you got.
Yes.
All right, so I got to go back in time a little bit. And again, this is for folks that maybe they don't know a lot of your background, but you tell us a little bit about like how you fell in love with the mountains, like that transition from being a teenager, like kind of like growing up into like, okay, here's school, but school's there, but Jackson Hole's over there. Take us through that journey.
Yeah. The irony of the whole thing is that I grew up in Texas. And so obviously not a lot of great skiing in Austin, Texas, but really blessed to have parents who kind of put this priority on it. And every spring break, like my fondest memories growing up were spring breaks. We would jump into a family Suburban and we'd drive whatever it was, 15, 16 hours to usually like Winter Park or somewhere like central Colorado, ski resorts, and spend like just a week where it was literally my favorite childhood memories of all time. And yeah, so the love was born there, and I'm sure like you're seeing with your offspring, mine are just 14 and 12 now, and they're already to that speed where they're like they can keep up. They've got a little bit more, they've got a little bit less inhibition than I do, So like I remember being like 14 or 15 and being like, this is the future. That's all I want to do. Like I could ski and snowboard every single day of my life. And if you fast forward a little bit, I was really drawn to the West Coast. So I only applied to West Coast schools for college, ended up out there. And my intention was always to play football. But when I went to USC, and it was a little bit bigger of a mountain than I wanted to climb. So I opted out of climbing football. And I wanted to fill the time, and I saw that they had a ski and snowboard team. And so from my freshman year onwards, I was like, I joined up and we would go to Mammoth Mountain. It was a whole different type of riding that I'd ever done. Sunny, beautiful, all about terrain and big hits, just a different attitude, right? And just love deep in change, got into racing a little bit, tried border cross, and we're actually in a league, like a Southern California league. So we would race against other schools and party a commensurate amount as well. And then to your point, I had some buddies who were a year above me, and they just on a whim, they moved out to Jackson Hole after they graduated. And so they had been in Santa Barbara. I would go up there and visit all the time, I'd go ride all the time. And they were just telling me stories about Jackson Hole, man. And it was like pulling at my soul because here I am stuck in Los Angeles on the weekend, like when I couldn't get up to Mammoth. And they're telling me these stories about the backcountry and what they'd done that day and what they'd seen and avalanches and crazy snow. And I made it a goal, and I literally took summer classes for 2 years so that I could get out a semester early, and went straight from I come back for graduation, went straight from like my final day of school to Jackson Hole, showed up with just a snowboard bag and a backpack. And I literally got dropped off by a bus at the gas station. And I called a friend of a friend who happened to be living there because my buddies had moved on to other places. And I was like, "Hey, dude, I'm so and so's friend," and they said I could probably stay with you. And ended up just couch surfing for a winter and fall in love with Jackson Hole. And for anybody who is into the mountains, if you go to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, I don't even know what to compare it to. I've been to mountains all around the world now, but Jackson Hole, it'll take a Pepsi challenge with anything on earth. And yeah, it took it
That's
from
a
here
very
to here. It's
Yeah,
a
that's a
special
super fair
place.
statement. Mammoth is great, and when it snows at Mammoth, you have a phenomenal time. But it's different. Like there's backcountry access in Mammoth, which you could say, well, that's Jackson-esque, but you got to earn those turns. Um, but I would say Palisades, Snowbird, and Jackson are the top three that constantly revolve around when people say, well, what are the top three resorts in North America, or I'm sorry, in the U.S. And I go, well, I say Snowbird first, Jackson second, Squaw, Palisades third. And that's an arguable point. I love the debates back and
Yeah,
forth on
yeah.
which one, but
Well, and I found like
Jackson is
this might.
inarguably,
Go ahead.
I
I was gonna say,
Jackson's inarguably, it's in that top three. It has to be.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was gonna say like when I got there, there was even this, and I'm sure it was just my personal experience, but the cultural side of things too. I was really impressed by like the caliber of person and the desire. There was so many people that were really fired up to like learn more about the mountains, take avalanche safety courses, get into like go to the rock gym at night and learn knots and learn mountaineering skills and then take that to the backcountry. So you had an additional educational component that was also sort of linked to like it was like a conservation mindset. People that really wanted to be outdoors, not just in the wintertime. And yeah, it was a different type of person that I found there too, where I was like, and some of them are still lifelong friends. And actually, I finished that first season. My parents were super proud. I got out of USC, and my first job was at Domino's Pizza, delivering pizzas while I was a ski bum. Um, got stuck into a friendship with my first roommates there, and he worked in Alaska as a fishing guy, and I was like, I got to see Alaska, let's go. And so in a $1,200 Subaru that he had bought, we took about a month and a half to drive up through British Columbia, through Yukon Territory, and through backcountries of Alaska, like basically super early season when people aren't on the Alpine Highway, and do backcountry and, probably get ourselves in situations we should not have been in, but, learned a lot from them. And, but then, was introduced to Alaska as well. So like in very quick succession, it was like, yo, check out Jackson Hole. It's mind blown.
Yeah.
Hey, check out Alaska. And it was one of those times where I was like, man, I feel sort of guilty, but this is the only thing that I want to do in my life right now.
Yeah. Sort of guilty, but also, this is absolutely next level. I mean, not that,
Yes.
you know, I, I dropped out of college, after my freshman year, so that Glenn and I could move to Utah, go to Snowbird, and do our version of that, minus the college degree. That came later.
Yes.
But so you kind of knocked out the degree, and this I'm going straight adventure. So after Alaska, was it like, I went right back to Jackson? How did because you kind of bounced around, and you ended up creating a little bit of a career for yourself during that chapter.
Well, I did seasonal work for 3 full years. So I would go Alaska, Jackson with, and I would drive every time. So whatever happened in between was just sort of like my little Don Quixote adventure around the United States, burning the Trail of Tears behind me. And
Cycling bells.
yeah, exactly. Of sorts. And yeah, let's see. So my last winter, instead of going to Jackson, I ended up in Bozeman because there was Alex excursions there. And we just sort of remodeled the house. Terrible snow year. But we got way into fit. I mean, I was always into fitness, but at that time, and I linked this in my mind to the movie The 300. But around that time, The 300 came out, and as with many people, like the rabbit hole, if you followed it far enough, it led back to CrossFit. And
Yeah.
so we kind of
Well,
found
it was Jim Jones, right? It was the famous Jim Jones
exactly.
300 workout.
It was
So
Jim
everyone
Jones, and it
saw
was
these.
like at that time you couldn't, or Mark Twight, Jim Jones, you couldn't figure out the link exactly. But if you found Jim Jones, you would find CrossFit as well. And it was all this crazy mixed modality training that like nobody had. It just had these cool elements, and it was still early days. Obviously, this is probably 2005, and yeah, it just had this kind of like mystery and appeal and aura to it. And I had to go back to Alaska, so I was like, shoot, how am I gonna keep this up? And what I managed to do was the lodge that I was at in Alaska, I should say, was pretty bougie. It was owned by a communications company called GCI. And so while the generator was on, you had internet access, which was very unique, obviously. And like, we're in the middle of nowhere. The national park that I worked in was 1.7 million acres. It's the biggest state park in the United States. And we were up like in the boonies, right? But yeah, while the generator was on, they had communications because obviously they're a communications company. And so I was able to follow CrossFit.com while I was in the Alaskan wilderness, and I had somehow talked these guys into. There was already free weights out there, but when we left Anchorage in the little Turbine Otter to go out to the camp for the first time, I I had bought a really crappy, janky little treadmill off of eBay, and I brought it with me, or Craigslist probably at the time, right? And so we loaded that thing up, brought it out there, and I was able to like, I started doing CrossFit basically in the outback of Alaska with very limited knowledge of what the hell I was doing, and I'm sure doing everything wrong looking back. But it's cool. Kind of fell in love with it, followed the blog and looked at all the comments and tried to learn as much as I could.
Yeah, I mean look at this is early fitness, right? Like thank God you had a shitty snow year. Which
Right,
I would
right.
never normally say to someone. But if you had like a glorious POW year and you're in Bozeman, you
Wouldn't
wouldn't have been
touch
in
it.
Bozeman. You would have been rallying out to Big Sky. You would have spent the whole
Yep,
winter there. The house probably never would have gotten finished. You still would have made it
yep,
to Alaska, but you would have been so busy skiing, snowboarding the whole time. Chances are this might not have happened. I mean,
100%.
that's wild. I actually never knew that detail.
Yep.
I didn't know that it was the movie 300 because we all watched that movie and we were all like, whether we're in our 20s or early 30s, like, those guys are super
Yes.
jacked. I want to
Some
get
people on this
super
call were
jacked.
in their
And then there was like
teens.
this legend of early internet of this mysterious workout. Um,
Yes. My favorite thing
but then
now is like, and I did the same thing the other day with Joe Rogan, but showing, I saw my kids watch the 300 for the first time probably 2 weeks ago. And of course, Gerard Butler just looks like a god. And I'm like, hey, guess what? Like, that's the same dude. And I showed him like a bunch of other movies that he was in, and they're like, no, no way, no way. Because now we got 2 decades afterwards to be like, body changes for different roles and things like that. But they do the same thing because they fell in love with Fear Factor watching it on, I think, I don't know, Hulu and Netflix now has all the episodes of Fear Factor, and they love Fear Factor. And I was like, hey, did you guys know that that's the same podcast that I like to listen to? And I showed them a picture of Joe Rogan, and they were like, nope,
nope.
that's not true. Because
Dad,
in
you're
their mind, Joe
wrong.
Rogan's 25 years old, like
With the
in his prime
sideburns,
of life
like,
with the
yeah.
sideburns. Yeah.
He has an age. He has an age. Look at maybe to them you're the exact same as you were 10 years ago too. You never know.
No, they know. They know.
They know. Damn it.
They used to like when I was working for CrossFit and doing like all the broadcast stuff. They were young enough to where when people would ask what I did, they said that I was in the CrossFit Games. And I was like, yeah, that is a hero.
I'm
Now
in
they're
the
old enough. And they're
CrossFit
like, you
games.
kind of work in an office. You're around CrossFit, but you're
Don't
not an
kill the
athlete.
dream, kids.
Exactly.
So this begs the question. So you wrap up Bozeman, you head up to Alaska, you get some janky ass treadmill up there, and you're knocking out CrossFit workouts. Season's over. Now you're going into fall. Did you go right back to the mountains, or was this part of your journey? Because obviously, like now it's
This is
'05,
part of
'06. Pretty soon there's a little chapter in San Diego.
Yes, this is the San Diego chapter was I drove directly there with a pit stop in Vegas and a few other places. Um, but the purpose was that myself and my best friend Alex um, were going to become commercial helicopter pilots. And so he already had a ticket to Hawaii. We were gonna, he was gonna go down there, go to a commercial thing. I had to get all the loans and stuff in place, but I was like, look, I'll come down. I'm gonna stay at your dad's place, and as soon as I can get my stuff together, like I'll make it out to you. Um, well, car trouble in Vegas, and I'll do the long story short, but effectively, like, there's this really, really cool um, uh, Grand Canyon Rim Road that you can go on if you find it, or you used to, anyways. But it was on the Havasupai Indian Reservation. Well, I decided to drive it, blew my tire out, And there's a whole long story there, being like trapped in the Indian reservation for a long time. Finally got the car fixed, finally got out. But by the time I got to San Diego, I was like, I got a lot of stuff I need to get fixed in my life, right? Like I got to get this car under control. I got to, get the bank account vamped back up. And so I ended up staying at Alex's dad's place, which is a gorgeous, on 4th Street in Encinitas overlooking the ocean. So it's not a bad situation by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm on my I'm on my buddy's dad's couch. I've got a broken truck in the shop, and as luck would have it, they had tried this gym down the street, and they were like, "Yeah, dude, there's a CrossFit gym down the street. It's like
Like
two skateboard
literally 4 blocks down the
like
street.
two skateboard kicks away, And and I was like, no way, because I'd never seen a physical location. Like to me, it was still just an online thing. And yeah, man, that was the first time I laid eyes on US CrossFit, which I don't know how much you have or haven't talked about it on the show, but it was like a gorgeous, very unique physical space. Like it was made to be a showroom for like fancy automobiles, right?
Yes.
It was like
Yeah.
a thousand.
The original vision of it was that it was going to be like an auto showroom, and it's an all glass building. So 3 of the 4 walls were glass, so you could just see through it everywhere. And
And like
however it
classy glass.
happened,
Like it was a classy looking building. It was pretty radical.
yeah, it never ever meant to house a bunch of heathens chucking kettlebells around. Like not what this thing was designed for. And we're talking like
100%.
vaulted giant ceilings with like gorgeous wooden beams across it, like very modern kind of, not modern, whatever they call that, like airplane architecture, like those kind
Yeah.
of big arcs, like an airplane hangar, but all glass walls. Somehow, a former Navy SEAL named Mark Devine gets the lease on that building, and he's like, "This is going to be my CrossFit gym." And this is in
Yep.
like 2006, I think. Like, am I right? 6 or 7?
Yeah. And I mean, listen, looking back at all like how what a dumb kid I was, like I never would have known it there, but to Murph's credit, like it was the embodiment of like a long-term vision that he had. And it wasn't working at the time, but like he has absolutely done a tremendous job of bringing like his dream to life. But yeah, he was running NavySeals.com out of the upstairs office. He had his little storage room downstairs, and then he wanted, he had this dream of basically um, SealFit was an inoculation for kids who wanted to go into buds. And so it was he was wanting to get them ready by doing mock hell weeks and just really beating them up. And in the meantime, him and Rob, actually I don't know how they found CrossFit. Like it was introduced to them or something, and it was obviously the SEAL community is a small place, and there was a lot of SEALs involved in CrossFit. So I'm sure they got the word, but
The SEALs in CrossFit, just like that, for my remembrance of it, like, as soon as it came in, it wasn't like there was a question. It was like,
yeah,
have you seen this new thing? We got to do
yeah,
this. It wasn't like there was up for
yeah.
debate or that's stupid. No, man, I'm going to go back and take a Pilates class, or do regular PST stuff. It was like, no, this is a whole new world. Like it
Yes.
hooked people in quick.
And at that time, like at the very least, and there's probably more that I'm going to miss, but like Castro and Andy Stuff were both active in the SEAL teams. And I think they were both teaching at Buds at that time. So like it was, people were highly involved in both communities, and it was overlaying really nicely as it does. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah. So I went down, had a workout with met Rob Ward for the first time, who was just sort of like a force of nature, and did my first CrossFit workout in a CrossFit facility, and realized, of course, that I was doing everything wrong, and also that like I was half. That wasn't even half as fit as I thought I was. I was a fraction as fit as I thought I was. And just yeah, absolutely loved every second of it.
I mean, it's the most insanely humbling thing ever. So you're in Encinitas, you're kind of trapped, you're in financial duress, and then you're looking for work
Yeah.
because you got to rebuild that bank account. You're sleeping on your buddy's couch, and Alex, by the way, who I did Murph with yesterday, so it's always great bumping into him, who is now a licensed helicopter pilot and saw the dream through,
He did, man.
18 years later.
So proud of him, actually. Like, yeah, he
It's
he,
cool.
he did eventually. Like, I sidetracked him for a while because I guess we'll be, getting ahead of myself. But he did go back to it, and yeah, he's fighting fires now and doing a lot of cool work in helicopters. So super stoked for him. But yeah, for me personally, it was like I had been working in a gym. I could tell from what was going on with like my vehicle and the fact that like helicopter school is not cheap. So if you're going to go the civilian route, I mean, you're talking about probably taking out $100,000 of student loans or something along those at least. And I was not extremely marketable to the banking community at that point in time, as luck would have it. And
Well
and
stated.
the luck that I was having with or sorry, the interactions I was having with CrossFit felt the same as like not quite the mountains, right? You're not getting the same thing out of it, but like the more I got of it and the more I heard the theoretical framework, listen to Glassman talk, listen to other people talk about why CrossFit was what CrossFit was, it just just kept smacking me in the face like a ton of bricks. I fell in love with it. So yeah, to your point, I needed a job and I wanted that to be my job. Unfortunately, Mark wasn't hiring at the time. So my first fitness gig in San Diego, I don't know if you remember this, but I worked at in LA boxing. I worked at LA boxing, like and this one was I think it was in Carlsbad. With a bunch of like
you did.
real fighters, like gritty dudes, So I walk in there just to be like, and I'm the manager, and they're just like shaking their heads at me,
Get this
But I worked
pretty
there for a
boy
while.
out of here.
Exactly. And eventually I got to coach one of the actual boxers on his return fight. He was like 42 years old. He didn't win, unfortunately. But yeah, I passed the time with that while I was still doing CrossFit for my passion and my own fitness. And then eventually a spot opened up to help Mark out.
And that's kind of like my entry into this story with you, which was absolutely next level. Was so Rory was my very first CrossFit coach. Glenn came home from deployment in like, I don't know, like late 2007, and he's like, Sean, I got this new thing, holy crap. And he was over in Iraq, and he discovered CrossFit. It was just the website, and I remember he would pull it up on his BlackBerry, and we had a membership at the local YMCA, and we would go in there and kind of like what, to your point, Rory, do everything wrong. But we're in this Globo gym setting, and it's mostly like if you're in the weight room part of a YMCA, it's basically a bunch of kids in high school that are just trying to drink as much protein as possible and just, do max benches. And then you got, Glenn and I, and he's like, hey, let's go over in that corner. We're going to learn how to do handstand push-ups. Like, the fuck is that? And then we're gonna learn how to do pull-ups, but not just pull-ups. We're going to do these kipping pull-ups. And he's like, it's all about the hips and like this rotation. And almost like, we look like two guys having an epileptic seizure in there, but we just worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And they didn't even have kettlebells in there. So we would take dumbbells and just hold on to the end of the dumbbells and just kind of swing them. And like, that would be our kettlebell. And then eventually Glenn's like, I was living in Carlsbad. He was in Encinitas, and we just team up there and do our workouts. And we teamed up there one day, and he's like, hey, there's some gym in town. It's owned by a SEAL, I heard. It's called US CrossFit. We got to go check it out. And I'm like, wait, like a real gym that just does that? And so we just went down there, and we roll on in there. And I mean, I'll never forget. You were there. Mark Devine was there. And we roll up, and Glenn just walks in like full peacock, just like walking around. He's like, hey, who's the Navy SEAL around here? And, Mark walks up. He's like, hello, I'm Mark Devine. And Glenn's like, I'm a SEAL. You need me to work out here. I validate your
Brother.
Like, I make your business look cool. Brother. And I'm hanging off his coattails, and I'm like, I'm friends with the Navy SEAL. I'm going to come in too.
I could play one in a movie.
Yeah, that was it, man. Like we rolled right in and out. That I'll never forget. Glenn was like, he had this whole policy in life: never pay retail. And it was like he would say it all the time. He's like, all right, where's the deal? Where's the deal? And I'm like, dude, come on, you make okay money. Like you just pay for some things. He's like, no. There's gonna be a way. Coupons. We're cutting coupons. We're figuring it out. We're getting the deal. And when he's like, I'm a Navy SEAL, I was like, I'm not paying for the gym membership. Like that's just not gonna happen. So.
Well,
I'm
and
here.
that was actually,
You're welcome.
So that was one of my questions for you, Rory, was Sean had told me back in the days like that you never actually charged him for a membership at US CrossFit.
Dude. Hey.
Too late.
I'm on the air, bro. Mark might see this. Well, here's what I'll say is I never claimed to be and it was nowhere on my resume that I was a business guy. You know, and I tell you what, if it wasn't somebody like Sean and Glenn, you know, actually, there's the term respect gets respect, right? It's like if you have people that you want to be around and you respect and you love, and like it brightens your life, great. But what CrossFit also gave me was the flip side of that, because anybody else who would come in and do like similar BS to be like, oh, hey, where's the deal, whatever, whatever. The coolest thing about CrossFit was that it allowed you to basically turn those people away. It was the first time that I ever heard, and Mark, if you're listening, I love you. He didn't subscribe to like, you know, I was listening to like Glassman, and I got a good story about this later, but you know, Glassman would preach things like, hey, if you got like a cancerous client, like fire them. If somebody questions the quality level that you're bringing or the value, like just don't let them come to the gym. And I've got a couple of interactions that I remember like that, where it'd be like some guys coming in and like you do the intro class, and you'd be like, yeah, it's $150 a month, like on the new classes, whatever. And they just keep on trying to, you know, whatever, like you would probably at a regular gym. And I'd let them go maybe like 3 goes around, and then I'd be like, look, dude, this is it. Take it or leave it. There's no deal. There's no hidden whatever. Like, if you don't want to be here, don't come. But I got to go teach this class. And it was super refreshing. But the fact that Sean never paid, it was probably just an oversight, Nathan. And I'm going to go back now and look at the books.
I'm gonna dig in my heels a little bit on this one. So a bro knows a bro. And once I realized that Rory was very interested in snowboarding, and he learned that my day job was I was the director of sports marketing at DC Shoes, and I knew it was coming. Like, I knew I couldn't ride Glenn's coattails forever. And I knew every once in a while Mark would be like scratching his head like, I like this guy, but what's the deal? And the first thing that Glenn and I did was Glenn had a rower that had been stored at my house, and we had to give it, like, we gave the rower to the gym. And, you know, a rower is like $900. So it was like a gesture. Like, we're going to keep it at the gym. Jim can use it. It's our rower. And that was like deposit number one. And then at one other point, Mark needed a couple kettlebells. And I remember being like, I'm going to get those kettlebells. And I, like, you know, found them on Craigslist, brought in a couple of kettlebells. And I was like, all right, I think I paid $20 for them, $50. Like, you know, scamming my way through, like, acts of goodwill. And then one time, just finally, like, Rory's like, Sean, man, listen, I think I'm supposed to charge you membership. I just remember being like, what's your foot size? And he's like, I'm a 13, or, you know, some giant foot. I'm like, what? You wear double XL outerwear? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I think I got you, man. And he's like, really? And I just brought you the biggest box of DC swag from the warehouse. And I just remember, like, kidding you up. And you were like, oh my God, it's Christmas. I just got all free outerwear, like bunch of different kits and outerwear and boots and stuff. And hey, man, never saw Bill from US CrossFit. It worked out great.
And in the grand scheme, I'd say it was very equitable. Like, you really did very hard and Solitude, and like eventually helping Mark out with the SealFit stuff, right? So
yeah, it was a blessing.
And
like I
was gonna say, these were early days, right? Like, so I don't know if it still happens this way, but there was tons of barter. You know, we should mention, not yet, right? And so not the least of which was there was this smoking hot blonde girl that used to come as well, and she happened to be a hairdresser. And so she started cutting me, Alex, and Mark's hair in exchange for a gym membership. And 15 years later, whatever it is, we're married with 2 kids. And so it all works out, you know?
Everyone, like, Ange would walk into the gym, and everyone would be like, who's that? And Rory's just like, back up, boys. I'll never forget, unceremoniously, and this is a photo that I wish we had, or video footage or something. So I have this great photo the first time that I did Murph with Glenn, and it's like we were just kind of in prep mode, and we did it with you, Rory, and you probably don't even
posted it yesterday.
It's like,
here, I can pull it up. Keep talking. I'll pull it up.
That was from the Grinder that year, and I'll never forget. Like, I'd never done that workout. It was my first time, and I didn't really understand, I think, the level of intensity. And I remember, like, slugging some water in there, and I go down to do like some push-ups, and I just all over Angie's foot. I am so sorry.
There's the boys. Look at that collared shirt. Look at gentlemen.
That's my favorite part of this photo. Is the collared shirts.
You know,
It'd be super
And the-
respectful.
I had my golf shirt on that day. What a great day to learn about Murph. I'm wearing one of Glenn's old flak jackets, like some training stuff that he had that he just stuffed the weight into, and there we go, man. I wish I still had that thing. I think it disintegrated from all the stink and sweat. It was like the worst hockey
Yes.
pads ever.
the DC on the really baggy shorts down here too. You can kind of
Yep.
see like
It was a
that
a
the
different
highlight
time.
of- Different
It was
time,
a different
man.
time. I want to go
Fitness
back
looked a
through
little-
like all the gym styles there were, like because you had the geographic regional style, right? It's like the DC and the circle or whatever. But then you also had what was going on at CrossFit at the time. Like we went through a tall socks phase, went through like Innovates became the thing for a while, different shoe styles, whatever.
remember
And
when the Reebok Zig was supposed to be like the new CrossFit
Yes.
shoe?
yes. And actually, my personal memory of when that was completely obliterated was at the Rogue versus Again Faster thing that we did in Tahoe, and Rich and Graham Holmberg did like a kind of a rematch, like a head-to-head thing, and Graham was trying to overhead squat in them, and it was almost hard to watch. It was like, oh gosh. And yeah, at least for me, and I think a lot of fans, it was like, yeah, I will never put those on my feet. But yeah, so many things, man. It's funny. I was listening to my kids love country music. Here we are in Tennessee, and I love country music. But all the songs like that are looking back. Oh, I wish I could learn to drive again. But what you're describing in that gym with you and Glenn, like let's learn handstand push-ups, let's swing a kettlebell around. Like, don't you wish you could go back there just for a second? Like when it was so new and gritty, and not that it's lost its magic, but it's just like there was a thing back then where it was like we were revolutionizing fitness, we were changing the world. It was something you'd never tried personally. It was like it was just so freaking cool, man.
It was a chapter. I mean, I look at snowboarding in a similar vein, and like these different cultures and experiences that you capture and you get a moment of, and every new generation puts their own spin on it because it's new to them every time they experience it. But and country music, like Heather will be like, "Oh my God, new Morgan Wallen song," and I'm like, "I remember when my dad would play Waylon Jennings for me," and it was just like mind blowing stuff, like songs I listened to 40 years later. And like that's gonna be my kids listening to Morgan Wallen, and hopefully a little Waylon Jennings too. But like all of those experiences in CrossFit, I think part of the appeal for me, and I don't want to speak for you, but I definitely think it has to be, is like you touched on this a little bit, which is the culture. There's a community. There's this new learning. There was this like zest for adventure, but to be better. And like, man, that's really fun to surround yourself with a tribe like that. And I mean, Glenn fully embraced that in the mountains. He brought it into the SEAL teams and community, but like for me, he brought me into that and introduced me to it in what ultimately became like, what are we, 16 years in on CrossFit, like 17 years. Like I've done more CrossFit than anything else, fitness wise. And I couldn't be more grateful for it.
100%. It changed my brain, man. Like, not just the CrossFit, but CrossFit combined with access to people like Glenn or Dave Castro or Andy Stump or any of the service members that I had. But even being at those SealFit camps where, I'll be honest, growing up, I was just sort of like, I didn't get it. And I had a grandfather who had been in World War II, but there was nothing in me that was like, driven to service for the country. And I don't say that as a point of pride. I say it as a deep regret, if I'm being honest. But
yeah,
being introduced to a gym in Southern California and then meeting these guys, Mark Devine, who's just like, he's this human who's like lived by a code, who's done some pretty freaking amazing things in his life. And he's constantly like sharpening the knife. And then you would meet, other people of his ilk who would accomplish those kind of things in their life, like Glenn. But then you would see these kids who wanted to do something. And where I think, so like I'm still sore from my Murph yesterday, but we would bring these kids in, we would mentally just annihilate them on the beach for 3 hours. They would come back, get a little snack, and then they would do Murph at like midnight that night. Whereas for me, it's like, oh, I got to carb up the night before and I got to get ready, whatever. You see these guys who like, you would watch in their head, you're like, wow, there's so much of this that's a mental who wants it and who doesn't, which is, I guess, what those SealFit camps are ultimately trying to show you anyways,
ultimately,
right?
That's
It was
what
like,
it was all about. Yeah,
it's
really
what's between the ears. And so, yeah, CrossFit definitely like it enhanced me as a person in that sense, where I was like, I don't know what it was, like maybe things came easy, or maybe it was, whatever it was, it showed me like, wow, you could always level up. And there's a story. I still go through it today, right? Like you got lazy days, you got unmotivated days, whatever it is. but you hit the gym and you're around like your bro's having a great day, or like, you're in a class and there's a unique energy or whatever it is. You're like, oh shit, man, this is like an unlock code for constantly increasing and getting better.
Yeah. So you touched on something with Glenn Castro, Andy Stumpf, like Mark Devine, like you're around a very intimate, you know, setting. It's not like anyone's up there, like, no one's famous. Like Andy doesn't have a super successful podcast. Mark hadn't written his first book. Dave was early into his career, kind of guiding CrossFit and really becoming the face of CrossFit for all those years. Tell me a little bit about those early years with Glenn, because I mean, you got some time in there with him in the gym. Like, any stories jump out at you or stand out?
Well, so you told you told the one about you guys' intro. My favorite one is that, like, here I am as a kid, and it's been decades, right? So I've learned so much about coaching since, and got to work on the seminar team and do a bunch of things. But one thing that you can't really teach anybody. They just have to get reps and they have to get experience is like managing people, right? And so I've got you two jokers in there. You've got some soccer moms, some ladies who, like, all different motivation levels, old people who are like, oh, don't push me too hard, young people who are like, oh, you're not pushing me hard enough, and trying to manage the crowd. Well, and of course, like, I'm learning these things to try and be a seminar instructor, and I'm trying to do the best job I could. And I remember specifically a lifting day where I don't even know if we were supposed to be doing back squat, but you sure were. And I'm going through like the basics of air squats, and here we are, and I want you to get here, and I want you to focus on these muscles. Wear a belt if you don't feel safe. I'm going to come around, I'm going to check all your reps. And like, as I remember it, like, I'm mid-sentence talking to the group about safety, and I turn around, and Sean's like, ass is in the air, and his head's touching the ground. He's dumping probably a 300-pound bar. I don't know if you could lift 300 at that point. An extremely heavy bar. He's dumping weight over the top of his head, like onto his head. And bounce it off the ground. And Glenn is like, there's not a serious bone in his body, and he's just geeking out laughing. And I'm like, oh my God, it's just embarrassing. And of course I was like red-faced and furious at the time, and saying, oh, come on, you guys are doing it wrong. Taking myself way too seriously. And so that leads into the second one, which is, I don't remember a specific episode, but I do remember many where, I'm not joking, we would go and we'd have beers right after we worked out, or we had a good social scene. And I do remember this, and I still have friends who are like this, and I never was before or after I stopped drinking. But I remember all of us going like fairly decently hard, right? Like, I was never one to turn down a beer. And so if somebody wanted to stay a little bit longer at the end of the night, I'd stay with them. And I remember the ability for Glenn to be there and be like the last one in the room, and then show up the next day and just show out like full speed, whatever, no holds barred. And it blew my mind. And I was like, I don't know if that's an earned skill. I don't know if you practice that, but
You practice
again,
it's a superpower, but
takes
it's
reps.
a honed skill. You got to put in your reps at the bar
Yeah.
and
Yes.
at the gym.
See, I
Both
could do it
bars.
with
Yeah.
snowboarding. I could show up and snowboard the next day, but to go to the gym and push hard, I was like, no, that's insane. And then actually, like, the one thing that I want to make sure that I talked about today, and I know that Sean and I have talked about it before, but I guess the funniest thing for me that happened was, in the wake of Benghazi and everything happening, where everybody's just like discombobulated and turned around, and like not understanding that Glenn had been there, but like then kind of little by little, like, a trickle of information came out, and like, yeah, it was actually Glenn Doherty who was there. Like 5 gyms pop up, and they're like, actually, there's a dude in my office, Tyson Oldroyd, and he's like, oh, dude, I don't know if you heard the news, but like, this dude trained at my gym, man. He was a good buddy. And I was like, the hell he did? He trained at my gym. He was a good buddy of mine. And then like 4 other gyms were like, yeah, Glenn was a local here at CrossFit such and such. And he had these micro communities where he had gone.
Yep.
And little by little, it was like, holy shit, like, he wasn't just there like being loved and loving in US CrossFit, but also these other gyms, because obviously he traveled for work and he was all over the place doing whatever he does. And that really, I had a good laugh about that, the
Yeah.
fact that he could basically be that same thing to all those different people. Whereas I was like, I felt this, not all of our shit, but like, I felt like he was part of our community, which he was, but it spoke
Yeah.
volumes to him that it was like, there was, I want to say, at least 5 other gyms that said the same thing, right? Like, they're like, oh yeah, Glenn was a local here, and train with us frequently and whatever.
Yep. Literally, like he was this, like you just kind of said it right there. Like we had to share our best friend with everyone. And it's like, Tyson, wait, in Midvale, Utah? Like, oh yeah, Glenn and I used to go in there, do 6 a.m. workouts, and then rally up to Snowbird afterwards and go ski and ride all day. And that was Tyson's gym. And like, I'll never forget meeting Tyson, meeting Miranda, and like, those are early impressionable times because CrossFit was so new. Like this is 2008, 2009. Like it's cultish, and it's, in those early years. And then like a guy from CrossFit Boston, I remember Glenn he spent one summer working in Boston. I think it was like 2009 or 2010. And then he does the demo video for the Glen Hero workout that pops up on YouTube somewhere in like late 2012. So that's another story that I always think of is, for those uninitiated into CrossFit, don't worry about it. Like it's a thing, and it's an amazingly transformative form of exercise, a little cultish, some would argue. But one of the things that CrossFit as a culture and sport does incredibly well is honor the fallen. So we talked a little bit about doing Murph earlier. CrossFit very quickly honored Glenn with a hero workout. That wouldn't have happened without you really driving it, because it was kind of your deal. Like you knew enough about CrossFit Inc. You had switched from US CrossFit to working for CrossFit headquarters. I think you'd already moved to Santa Cruz with Ange, and like you guys were in that next chapter of life. Do you remember that whole spin up?
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, man, I can't. Yes, I got to be. It was an honor that I got to be like an intermediary for that. But I would also say this: I was not a gatekeeper, but I would always often answer like the customer service stuff. And you'd have many, unfortunately, especially during Iraq, Afghanistan, an influx of like, hey, can we make a hero workout for this person? And there was criteria that was clearly listed, like they had to be known to be a CrossFitter, you had to have some movements, like ideally, somebody who was maybe a representative of a gym would help curate the workout, whatever it was. Glenn was just such an obvious slam dunk fit, because like we said, there's 5 different affiliates, much less people like you and myself who were, had very personal stories of his interactions with the communities and stuff. So it wasn't as if it was a hard sell or there was something I had like, politic for.
No.
But yeah, absolutely. I remember. And you already had the workout created, right?
So Danny Miller, who is another one of the US CrossFit coaches, Dan and I kind of picked up the torch for coaching when you left. So you and Alex left. Alex took off and started his own gym. You end up taking off and going to work for CrossFit HQ, which is like a huge opportunity at the time. And it was like the next level up. And everyone's just like, Mark was like, oh crap, like I'm losing like this core group. But Glenn had started coaching there when he was in between deployments, and I would pick off a class or two. Mark made me go get my level 1. I say he made me because he just eventually, after you left, I'm like, I got no one else to give free gear to. And Mark's like, hey man, can you just coach like a class a week to pay for your membership? And I'm like, honestly, you want me to coach? And I remember him being like, you do great at that. And like when he said that, I was like, let's go. I go get my level 1. I start that process, and I'm like, I absolutely fell in love with coaching. The idea of helping others with the simplest basic movements was, it was kind of inspired by you. Like you tore me down and rebuilt me. Like I thought I knew how to squat. I didn't squat. I'll never forget you sticking a door, literally a door in front of me and being like, put your nose next to this door and then, drop your butt to the ground. And I'm like, I couldn't do it. And I'm like,
it's a magic trick.
God damn it. And like those little basic fundamentals that I remember from 15 years ago still get into my head. And, like that's the magic of that. And Glenn was a natural. He never got his level 1. So I'm going to say, sorry, CrossFit. Like no one ever checked. But he coached classes all the time. He loved it. He was so good at like just getting the group energized and involved and helping them achieve their own PRs, their own way of doing a personal best. But when it came to Glenn's passing, you started the process. You're like, Sean, meet Tony Budding or someone from the CrossFit Inc. group. And Danny Miller and I got together, and we wrote down all of Glen's favorite movements. I found the old emails where we were very passionately writing about who he was and the things that he loved doing. And there was only one movement that they put in there that was, what Glen would have chosen. What we felt like we were very, very pridefully controlling of this process. And I don't know if it was Tony or whether it was a committee, but they absolutely magically created the most appropriate workout that they could have in honoring Glen. Like, I remember putting pull-ups in there, but they didn't do pull-ups. They did rope climbs. Oh yeah, rope climbs are like the hardest form of a pull-up. Like, of course that's what they would do. Ground overhead was the only thing that Glen was always doing clean and jerks. Like, that was like a go-to movement. I remember being like, oh, we got to put rowing in there, because that was like the start of our journey into CrossFit. Was this old dilapidated rower with a wooden handle that we would trade back and forth and ultimately share with the gym. And they're like, no, we're not going to row. What? You're not rowing? No, we're going to put a couple miles of running in though. And I'm like, oh, and then Glen always did push-ups. He had this like giant barrel chest. And they're like, yeah, no, we're going to do burpees instead of push-ups. And we're just like, but he hated burpees. But then I'm like, oh man, there's a genius in this whole workout. And it was a mental slog. It's a challenge. Like, you got to, every time you turn the corner, there's another daunting task in front of you. And I was like, man, well done. CrossFit took all the things we said to do and just leveled them all up. They punched them all up in a way that made it so appropriate.
Yeah, I have to think. I don't remember, but I have to think that I wish I still had access to that email. But the date was involved, and because programming was often fell into his purview, especially when it came to like hero workouts. Tony certainly was a massive part of it at that point too. So but yeah, the Glen workout's the only one that I do. Like, again, yesterday it's this crazy important day to me. And I've got an emotional attachment to it. But Glen was the first person that I can really say, hey, I knew this person who died in combat. And it's the first workout where I've actually like shed tears, like, while doing the workout, like I've actually had the emotions bubble up. And I know a lot of people have that kind of experience. You can't fabricate it. You can't make it out. But yeah, the first time I did that, man, it was one of the most, it's cool because working out for me, and again, we'll go back to the competition thing. Like, it's more of like a moving meditation, and it's just like part of my day. It just makes me a person, right? It makes me the person that I am.
Yeah.
But that one in particular was hugely just an amazing experience. Like, I'll never forget it.
Yeah. It's funny. I remember bawling my eyes out on that workout and just pouring my heart and soul into it. And I can't do Murph without thinking about what, like, the kind of big picture, and I can't do Murph without thinking about Glen. And like, to be able to tap into that, it's an emotional energy source. It's a grounding force. It's a WWGD. What would Glen do? Any of those inspirational moments. I'm lucky to be one of the hundreds and hundreds of people that knew Glen and got to call him best friend. You got to coach him. Like, you got to be a part of his early CrossFit experience and like be able to have that in you. And I mean, man, I'll say it, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
100%.
Yeah. And that's it's a way to take a tragedy and turn into a positive. I mean, hey, we all wish he was just here. We all wish he was with us. Well, now we've got this. So, it's an opportunity to remember him, remember the fallen, and dig in. And I mean, it's just funny how life comes together. Like, of course, our first real CrossFit coach is happening with another guy who loves the mountains and being skiing and being in that environment in a gym that's owned by a Navy SEAL. Like, what a perfect storm of fun. And oh yeah, there happens to be a beach 2 blocks away, and there happens to be a bar about 14 steps away that we can go tear it off afterwards.
We had it pretty good. I never, I'd like to think that I didn't take those days for granted, but I probably did a little bit. But yeah, tremendously fond memories, and like everything that, and I still believe this to be true, but like CrossFit, you just can't argue that. And we may be getting way too inside baseball for some of your viewers, but there's been some ridiculously turbulent years, right? Where any other, I'm convinced, like any other community, fitness or otherwise, would have probably disbanded, gone their own way, whatever, splintered, and ours has somewhat. But like that community that we had back then, where again, like you're curated relationships outside of the gym, you're not just friendships, but like shit, I've known you and been close friends with you for whatever, shit, 17,
16,
15 years,
17 years now.
16, 17 years. I mean, um, and I married a woman who I met in the gym, and all the things. So that is just like such a cool reminder for me. And like nowadays, I have to remind myself to like run away from the online space and run back into the gym, because Mayhem has something really similar, right? You can go in, and if there's bullshit happening in the inside baseball CrossFit ecosystem, you walk into that room and there's probably 50 to 100 people who have no idea if any of it is going on, right? Like they may have, like they saw one Instagram post, or they have a question, but really they're just there to get their workout in, see their friends, do their thing, and go on and deal with the day,
Yeah, it's kind of a beautiful thing. That is the simplicity of it. I mean, Nathan, you're a gym owner, like you probably say the same thing.
I was just about to say, like, all the stuff that, like, 2020 was probably the most polarizing year for all of that stuff. And like I had one of my members, she's now 78, she's probably like 74 at that time, and she's like,
Wow.
I heard there's something going on with CrossFit, like, is everything okay? And I'm like, yes, don't worry about it, Pat, it's not going to affect you, like, we are fine here. But like I had so many of my members who like just, they're oblivious to it. Like it's more of a suburban population. No one's trying to make the games. They just want to get a good workout in. And so it's, like all of the politics and like the game, like they probably couldn't name 3 current games athletes, like a lot of my members, which is actually awesome because our community is so strong. They're not like, but yeah, and every gym is different. That's just kind of how mine is. And a lot of that's just where it's located geographically. But it was funny because people are like, so I heard the owner of CrossFit might have said some not nice things. Like that was, I'm like, yeah, you could say that.
So anyways, the workout today.
Moving
Let's get
on.
you warmed up.
That's funny.
Yeah. Oh,
That's
that's funny.
Well, listen, I think it's a great segue into a mandatory rapid fire question. Nathan and I are going to take turns. He's going to lead this off. I don't know what his first question is going to be, but I know I'm not going to like it. Just rapid fire here through some of these, and
Also, I just want to say, because I'll ask the question, I'll go right into it, but I know I was really quiet during all that conversation. I was like, as someone who's been in the CrossFit space for a long time, but just seen a lot from that was really entertaining for me to watch. And like, I never knew Glenn, but obviously I know Sean and TJ super well. It's like, it feels like I did know Glenn just kind of through him, and Rory, hearing you talk about some of that stuff, I'm like, so that was really cool for me. So like,
Nathan,
I know I was really
he was
quiet,
there.
but
I mean, yesterday is probably the only snapshot of things I would never do in normal life, but I do every year on Memorial Day. A typical workout would have ended with going across the street to this bar called Beachside, grabbing a couple IPAs, and Glenn would be like, well, you drink an IPA because that dumbass over there drinking a Bud or Coors Light, like he's got to buy 3 of those to equal the alcohol content in one of these. So this is a more economical choice. See, so I'm going to drink the IPA. I'm like, man, that's good thinking. I only need to drink like 3 of those things, and that guy's got to drink like 8 beers.
And my sickness was that I was still drinking 8 IPAs. I was a thirsty guy.
Yeah, those were dangerous years for all of us. And then show up the next morning and do it all over again, like, and just put out, man, and show up with a smile on your face. So it was a magical time, and like that's yesterday we, we do Murph, got a little work done. Go grab the kids and Heather and drive up to Mount Soledad. I packed a cooler full of beers. It's 2024, so I had a couple athletic non-alcoholic beers in there as well. And go and meet up with, Marine, my buddy John McKinley, Danny Miller showed up, Nikki Miller shows up, the girls, Andy Lotz, like all these old friends. And all of a sudden we got 15 people huddled around this plaque up in Mount Soledad honoring Glenn, and just getting a couple quiet moments and a couple story, like loud moments. Mike Mahoney's there, and everyone grabs a beer and cheers to Glenn, and just to have those moments. And like, we're lucky to be able to do that. And it's like, go work hard, play hard, remember those folks that are important to you, and get back and do it again the next day, man. It's super, super important.
100%.
So I think Nathan's got a couple rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah, and do you just want to go back and forth, Sean, like we did last time? I
Yeah.
like the way that. Okay, cool. Okay, Rory, close your eyes for a second. Clear your head. Viewers, you can also close your eyes and clear your head. Rory, was Sean a good student in class?
No.
I was the worst.
Sean was not Sean. It depends, man. If you're grading on, sorry, I don't know if these are supposed to be quick answers, but like to your point about Glenn being a good coach despite level 1, there's some intangible things that you cannot teach, whether you take a level 15. I think that for a coach, those are empathy, those are certainly energy and the ability to inspire people. And so, yeah, so, if we're looking at this as like a chart, then he was off the charts fantastic in terms of like energy and vibe. In terms of rule following and attention to detail, he was close. Let's give him a 1-2. But
I've got
he
members
remembered
like
the door.
that.
He remembered the door squat. So I mean, maybe it was just maybe I wasn't paying attention.
No, I wasn't paying attention, so you had to pull the door out to correct my
Okay, that's
ass.
fair.
So,
I wanted to smash
that
your
was-
face into it. Yeah.
No, I stand by some of the best like people for the gym are lots of times the worst listeners in class. Like that's a real
Yes.
thing.
Guilty. What was your very first job?
Ever. I worked in I was a lifeguard. I was a lifeguard. We were in Austin, Texas, and we lived in a neighborhood right down there by Lake Austin, which at the time was so ghetto. And now, if you went like 2 blocks down the road is where like Lance Armstrong lives, and there's all these crazy like estates on the river. But back then, it was like you weren't gonna get shot or anything, but it was pretty redneck.
Got it.
What was your dream job growing up?
I just talked to my kids about this, and there's a couple. Last night, if you guys haven't done this in a while, the 1989 film Abyss is tremendous. And that's a segue that I wanted to be a marine biologist for the longest time. So marine biology was my big one. And then we also watched, it's pathetic that all of my memories come from movies, but we just watched Fall Guy. And I remember like through all entire middle school career, I wanted to be a stunt guy. And go do stunts and stuff. I used to read books and take them out of the library and stuff. So, Stuntman was another big one for me.
That's funny. We just spent some time 2 weekends ago. We were at Summer Strong, this great fitness event that the guys at Sorinex put on. And Kai Furneaux was there, and she talks about how she always stunt woman, and she had like a 15-year career being like all the Marvel stand-ins and like of doing all these crazy superhero movies. And I remember having one high school friend who went off to be a stunt person, and this guy John took off to LA to like go and work in stunts, and we were all just like, that's fascinating. I wanted to be a snowboarder, so it didn't work for me.
So Pat,
quick ranking
real quick, Pat Vellner's brother, John, I'll mess up his first name, but Pat Vellner's brother is a stuntman. Is radical and he's a great follow. I'll send it to you. He's a Cirque du Soleil guy, but he also does all these gnarly stunts.
Interesting.
All
right, go.
Definitely send me that one. I always looking at humans perform amazing tricks is just good fodder. So if you're going to be scrolling, you might as well get a little something. You're like, what?
Might as well
How
get
did he
something
do
good.
that? All right, rank these from best to worst: salsa, queso, guacamole.
Where's the queso from?
You decide.
I'm a Texan. If it's like Maudie's queso in Austin, Texas, like queso is untouchable. It's
Yes.
ranks above all. Guacamole is fighting for first position, so they're tied on points, but whoever, depending on location, like one of them wins. And then salsa is salsa, although you can find a fantastic salsa. It's just sort of, it's I don't not love it, but it ranks lower.
Okay, that's fair. Totally fair. Nathan?
Building on that, what's your Chipotle order?
Okay, so I have to get the context that right now I'm not eating gluten or dairy, and so the queso question was tough. But I always go. So what I do is I order a bowl, not a salad, because if you order a salad, they'll give you too much lettuce. I order the bowl, but then you ask for the salad dressing at the end, and I'll usually do double meat with either carnitas or chicken, depending on if you can tell that the chicken's fresh, I'll always go for the chicken and steak. I'll go with the corn salsa. I'll get the pico de gallo, and then a little bit of lettuce on top, salad dressing. Good to go.
Done deal.
Oh, sorry,
Solid.
white rice, no beans. White rice, no beans.
No beans. No beans.
Yeah, no beans. Beans are just it's just like a filler at Chipotle.
Yep. Fair enough. Do you play any instruments?
For the first time, I'm the guy who has owned a guitar since I was like 15, but all I could do was just make it sound awful. And so for the first time in my life, I disciplined myself to play about 5 minutes a day. And so if we're talking about a year, I'll play you a song.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to that. 1 year
Okay.
from now, guitar, song, Rory, go.
And here's a good one,
And
actually.
you could do this on social media. You could just record your song and just post it. Just tag me, and then I'll be able to find you there. Because if you
Hashtag
don't,
bugs.
just send me a video of it. I'm gonna post it for you. So
That's fair. Actually, I like the pressure. But when the first year that I went to Alaska, I brought a violin with me because I was convinced I was going to play the violin, which is a very difficult instrument. And in that environment, I did manage to get to where I could play like one or two jigs and like Mary Had a Little Lamb type stuff, you know. But unfortunately, when you come back out of the woods, there's so many more distractions that the violin went the way of the dodo bird for me.
I'm gonna say guitar makes a lot more sense. I got
Yeah.
an Animal House vision of you just strumming away at the guitar, and probably just 15, 16 girls down below just pining away, and then Angie coming in, picking up the guitar, smashing it just like Belushi did.
Yes. Yeah,
Just
all I
saying.
want to do is I just want to be able to kick out a couple around the campfire, you know?
That's awesome. I think you're well on your way. And I'm
Do
on
you
that
li-
note.
Yeah. Do you like receiving gifts?
Oh, hell yeah. What do you got? Just kidding.
Bubs.
No,
Got a lot of bubs coming your way.
That went back to a conversation Sean and I had about love languages, and both of us were like, I don't really like receiving gifts. And so it's just like interesting, like, yeah. So what kind of gifts do you like to receive?
Well, here's the deal. I don't like it's funny, my whole family's this way. I don't like the social pressure. Like if I had a birthday party when I was a kid, I wanted the presents to be open like after everybody was gone, you know? Like
Mhm.
not because I didn't appreciate them, but I hated like the forced interaction of like, thank yous and whatnot. So um but yeah, meaningful, thoughtful gifts nowadays. Me and Ange are far more focused on experiences than things. And
Mhm.
so we're trying to focus on that. If it's something as simple as like a concert or a date night or
Yeah,
a vacation we're going to go on, something like that supersedes any kind of, physical thing with it.
I agree with that. Those experiential ones, those are
Yeah.
good. Why did you shoot your truck?
God, this is a good question, man. And it was really hard to answer this question to my children.
Oh, I can
We were,
imagine.
did you see Joe Rogan shoot the Tesla truck?
I heard about it. I didn't actually see it,
Okay,
but
so
like it made the rounds.
that's vaguely my why, is because we were talking about that on the podcast. And with the videographer here at Mayhem, I was like, hey, should I say that I'm going to shoot my F-150 and like, be a dumbass about it? He's like, oh yeah, definitely do it. Definitely do it. So knowing full well that it was going to go through my truck door, I was like, oh, dude, I mouthed off on the Rich Froning podcast. And then enough people were fired up about it that I was like, fuck you guys. Like, I'm going to show you. They're like, oh, I'll talk. He won't do it. He won't do it. And I was like, dude, this truck's been through way more than this.
Pink.
So
Ooh.
no good reason.
You were smart about it though, and you put at least the bag in the truck because it would have gone through both doors.
I almost regret it, if I'm being honest. Like, if you're gonna do it, why not do it all the way? And I'll tell you what, like, because
Clean
the second way to answer this is to say, like, who doesn't want to shoot their truck door with an arrow? Like, let's be honest. And so I was going for it, and I was like, it fully, the way that it sailed through that first door, it would have gone through both doors and then out into the field like a significant distance. So yes, you're right. It was good foresight, and I got to credit Rich with that. But I almost wish that I would have done both doors.
I mean, just put a punctuation mark on that one.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it right.
This one is so. Have you ever heard of like what's your stripper name? And it's based off of what was your first pet, and the street that you grew up on determines your stripper name.
I would be C.W. Birkdale. And it's
Okay.
important. And it's important to know that
Ooh.
CW stands for Country Western. C.W. Birkdale.
Is that a
Would
dog
have
or a
been
cat?
like, that was a big old chow mix dog.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, so with that, it'd have to be like assless chaps and a cowboy hat. You know,
Hmm.
I think that'd be the only thing that fit.
Yeah. Sean, you
That's
got the
funny.
next one.
All right. Probably a big one here. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oof.
You've been around some amazing people in your life, so I can only imagine you probably have a lot to sift through there.
For sure. So maybe I'll go with recency instead of like all time because there's so much, right? Um, but in recent conversation, just with a close group of friends, and it wasn't necessarily advice. It was just more, somebody had made the observation through reading, and that observation was that you don't find the meaning of life, you create it. And so a lot of
Mm.
people are, they're searching and so, oh, it hasn't happened. This thing hasn't happened before yet. My big break's going to come or whatever it is. And you get caught up in that kind of BS of waiting for something or, this faith that's been promised to you, whatever it is, as opposed to making the meaning of life, right? Because you can wait and wait and wait and wait, but you can also take action and create meaning out of what you've got. And I think, especially in this day and age, due to Instagram and seeing what other people have going on and jealousy and comparison and all that bullshit, you can really get lost in the weeds instead of kind of focusing on gratitude and what you've got available to you now. And so being grateful for it, but also deciding what the meaning of your life is.
Amen. Yeah, man, that's good stuff.
You've been a lot of places. What is your favorite place you've ever visited? Or top two, top three? Like,
Okay, so the one that springs to mind always is well, Alaska will forever be like one of my places, so I'll put that on there. But the island of Corsica, which is currently Italian owned, I suppose. It's an island in between France and Italy that, if I remember correctly, it's where they sent Napoleon when he was
Correct.
excommunicated.
Yep.
And then we went and we visited there, and it was one of the coolest places I've ever been. And all of these things, like I asterisk them, and I'm like, I was young, no responsibilities, just traveling, like, so you got to factor all that stuff in. But if you have the opportunity to go to Corsica, it's absolutely tremendous from a historical point of view, but also from it's got everything, kind of like in Santa Cruz, where you can go and be at the beach and then be at the redwoods. This was like amazing forests on the interior and just gorgeous beaches with like rosemary and sage just growing naturally, so the whole place smells good. And then the other one that springs to mind is that I went to the Amazonian rainforest in Peru. Um, did the Inca Trail that same year, and so I'm throwing a bunch out there. But the rainforest was mind blowing, and the fact that as a kid you read about it, you hear about these kind of things, and it definitely it was all the hype was real.
That's awesome. It's
Yeah.
funny. Heather and I are been planning our 10-year wedding anniversary. Also a woman that you meet in a CrossFit gym that you fall in love with and just absolutely chase down and have to spend the rest of your life with. And here we are, years later, and we're looking at 10 years and we're like, oh, we want to go to Italy, but like we're talking about going to Rome, Mount Vesuvius, the Amalfi Coast, not that far from Corsica. There's a couple other spots we've been talking about, and one of them was, do we go to Peru, do part of the Inca Trail, and end up in Cusco, like, and have part of that experience as a full adventure? And we're like which one speaks to the 10-year anniversary better
Yeah,
for
right.
us? And we've been like going back and forth, and I'm like, man, there's just no bad choices here.
There's no bad
Um,
choices there.
so I love that
Um,
your top two are literally in our top two list of like, where should we go for this amazing chance to just be energized by nature, the outdoors, love all the good stuff that's important.
Italy sounds more romantic.
We're leaning that way. We're
Yeah.
leaning that way.
That's more
100%.
anniversary-ish, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. The other one will have its adventure plays, and maybe maybe it's part of that with the kids and like see what they're capable. They're a little on the young side for that one right now.
100%. If they ever open up Machu Picchu, they closed down to tourists, right? So I think that if they ever open
They
that back up,
they did. So it was
yeah.
part of the bucket list was to do that. And yes, that is back open. Like there's a
Oh,
series of
nice.
hotels, well, more like lodges that are in the base area that you can go to. So that would be part of that experience.
Love it.
Nathan, what do you got?
That you got the last one. I asked the visiting one.
Oh, there we go. What do you do to relax? What does relaxation look like?
Man, we do a lot of this is funny. So we moved out here from California, right? And we now live on 13 acres, which is tremendous, but it's also a lot of upkeep. And so I got a zero turn tractor that I like to jump on, dude, keep the grass down, lift things, cut things up with a chainsaw. Um, there's a lot of like outdoors that just has to do with like land maintenance that I really and truly love because I need the solitude, right? So like anybody who's spent the summer in Alaska, as much as I want to be with my family 24/7, I got to get away from it as well. So, um, not my family. I have to get away from life. And so, yeah, love being outside on the land, and then mountain biking. Dude, we talked about it, but it's like I can't
Yeah.
surf here, and so that's a great, easy outdoor outlet where you can throw some headphones in or not, and be in some pretty incredible nature, but also kind of like get the heart rate up high and just get some good thinking done.
And you're in God's country for that. When TJ, the other half of Bubs, lived in Knoxville, I went down to visit him once, and we were doing some like just workshop meetings, and he's like, "Well, we got to go for a mountain bike ride." And I was like, "Okay." I mean, yeah, I mountain bike at home, and I hadn't felt the vibe on mountain biking. I just kids and running around too much. And we went out for a couple of hours, and I could not believe how pristine the trail systems and the forest and the outdoors are in Tennessee in your area. I mean, you are truly in God's country for mountain biking.
Dude, and like you forget, it's like you get on two wheels and it's like being a kid again. You know what I mean? Like you get that feeling. It's almost like in downhill's a little video game and super interactive. Like it touches the same dopamine centers as skiing and snowboarding, like when you're going downhill. And it's just gorgeous, man.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. On that note, Rory, thank you so much for
Thank you,
taking
brother.
time with us today and joining us today. If people want to learn more about you and CrossFit Mayhem and things that you're involved in, where can they find you?
So, man, I'm on Instagram, but I've been just a total. I lost my voice on Instagram a little bit, so I'm committed to um, getting back into the game and sort of making sure that I'm promoting what I want to promote and talking about what I want to talk about. So just my first and last name, Rory McKernan. Mayhem is easy to find. Usually our best content goes on Rich's channel. So on Instagram, check out Rich Froning, check out the CrossFit Mayhem to see like the Mayhem athlete stuff. So most of the work that I get to touch, luckily, is on those channels. And the YouTube channel for Mayhem also is we're always up to some pretty fun stuff. So worth checking us out there.
And your podcast.
Yeah. The podcast. I mean, funny enough, I think that I don't know if this is unique to podcasts, but we get as much viewership on YouTube as we do people downloading and listening. And so every episode is on YouTube. Really just us kind of shooting shit. Like we talk CrossFit, but Rich is way into the outdoors. We talk about family life, the whole thing. So, if it hits your vibe, try an episode of that too. And, or you could check out my page on bugs.com and buy some product using the code Rory.
Oh, you have a code? Who let
I do.
that happen? Wait a minute.
Your team made sure to
Damn.
leave you off of the CC.
You know what? This is where I'm on a need to know basis. I didn't need to know that.
I was like,
That's
nobody
amazing,
tells
though.
Sean.
Now everybody's
Nobody
going to want
tells
to come on here and pimp their code. Like,
Just
Hey,
tell them
Nathan,
all
you
that their
got-
code is Rory.
Yeah. You know what the edit button is. You just mute that one. Make it
Go
don't
bleep
let
that
him, don't
out,
let him
yeah.
use the podcast for that.
Yeah.
Or better yet, give him that snippet to post so that he always
Yeah.
got it on his own on that channel.
Yes.
I love that.
That's actually the last thing we do on our podcast always is we're just like, because he did it so much, we're like, all right, Angelo, what do you want to talk about? And he'll be like, well, you can use Mayhem athlete code, blah, 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 and you can do this, blah, blah, blah. So we'll give him a straight 90 seconds to 2 minutes just to promote his codes.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
ding. And check the show notes because it's all going to be listed there
Yeah.
alphabetically.
Exactly.
and we'll throw all of, like, for the listeners, we'll throw like Rory's and Mayhem's and everything in the show notes. So if you're YouTube or on the audio channels, like you can go in there and click and find all that stuff. So
Awesome.
cool. Rory, yeah, thanks again for being here with today. We'll outro and then be on our way. So guys, as
Thank you,
always,
both.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank
it
you
was
for
awesome.
coming in.
Stay on for just a second, though. I think
I'll
you
tell you what
yeah,
to do.
correct.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what to do.
do not hang out for just a second then afterwards.
I'll be here.
Yeah. Damn it. Okay. Guys, thank you for listening. You can find the Cult of Recreationalism on all podcasting services. And don't forget to check us out on YouTube as well as our social media. Just look up Bubs Naturals and you're going to find us. And while you're at it, leave a thumbs up, leave a 5-star, whatever platform you're on, leave a positive review. It all helps. So, Rory, once again, thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Awesome, guys.